Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stewart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look. Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. We have I don't know if you could call it an emergency update, but close to it. Things are really starting to move in the Middle East and the Ukraine, and I suppose we could start. Larry, this thing with Israel puts troop on Lebanon border. Lebanon now deploying troops to face them. What is going on over there? Sounds like they've decided they are going to attack Lebanon. What's your take?
Well, here's one of the headlines. Says Israel deploys IDF troops to the Lebanon border, as Lebanon now deploying troops to so-called blue line with Israel. Intelligence reporting that to expect an Israeli-Lebanon war before Christmas. And I know that some of this is ongoing because the last 2 days Netanyahu has been on the Lebanon border visiting with the troops and working that area. They've been, Israeli overflights, off the coast of Lebanon, watching Beirut, and also, too, there was a Israeli delegation sent to Moscow to meet with, the Putin group about a move that's about to be made against Lebanon. So something's up.
And is there, now at the same time, I think it was you probably that even told me that Hezbollah on one side and their other enemies on the other maybe attack at the same time. What's that about?
That was the latest report from Debka Files reporting that intel shows that Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon is coordinating a mass uprising on each border, which is the north and the south, of course, at the same time. And Israel is also warning their people and to prep for possible Hezbollah missile attacks and possible Gaza missile attacks at the very same time. Israel has just about gone the limit of not being the aggressor in this. They've not really been fighting back against these missiles and these uprisings, but I think we're close to seeing a war.
Yeah, isn't that one of the reasons that Lieberman quit, wasn't it? That he didn't feel Netanyahu had responded properly. And
yeah, that's true.
So maybe he's going to this time. They've got to do something, and the longer they wait, the worse it's going to be for them. So this is going to get interesting. Okay, moving over to Ukraine, which is the primary reason actually for this broadcast. This sounds like we're headed to war. Here's the headline: Ukraine alerts 90 hospitals, prepare for incoming wounded, cleansing of unwanted elements going to take place. What is that about? It says they plan to use more than 90 hospitals across the country to treat the injured servicemen during the offensive in Donbass. Now, was it Donbass where they were going to have the false flag, or is that elsewhere?
The region that possibly the false flags are going to come down in. What's interesting is that there's been a buildup. We've seen the tanks being brought over from Poland, into Ukraine to use, and some said that was NATO doing it. Some said others were doing it, but also there was also a covert intelligence report and a photograph, and you've probably seen it, of a convoy of BMP infantry fighting vehicles coming in to the Ukraine from Slovakia. And they say more war prep. So, and let me read right quick what, listen to this. This is an urgent intel. It says, Ukraine government plans false flag attack in Mariupol within 72 hours or about December the 14th in Ukraine. A report from Ukraine indicates that it has massed 12,000 plus troops 50 tanks, 40 artillery rocket systems, 180 mortar systems near the false flag location, which I think is going to be that Donbass or whatever you called it there. And and then of course that there was a new report, and you just read it. Said that Ukraine has alerted 90 hospitals to prepare for a mass casualty, incoming wounded event that was about to happen. So they don't do that just to do a drill.
Yeah, and they said it had, with the 90 hospitals, they had a capacity of about 41,000. So they're anticipating heavy casualties, obviously, in this battle. But what's your take? I can't imagine that Putin is going to, we've got those warships heading over, and they probably get there about the same time, or maybe just a little before. So we have a confrontation there because Russia has said, no, you're not going to cross over into the Sea of Azov. And NATO is more or less poo-pooing that and said, yes, we will. And that's a direct confrontation. And, of course, that can spread very, very easily. So it sounds to me like unless somebody blinks and they back off, we're going to be seeing major war. And who knows what North Korea is going to do? Who knows what China is going to do? They've been making threats towards Taiwan. In fact, I was just reading an article where one of their naval admirals said, next time the U.S. invades some of our territorial waters, they've got those islands that they've built and claiming territorial waters, that they're going to ram them and stop them. Well, that's an act of war if they ram one of our ships. So that almost sounds to me like what we're staring down is the Armageddon script, where war was to break out just about everywhere. And in spite of what Donald Trump says, our military's basically been decimated. We can't fight war on 2 or 3 fronts and get away with it. We'd be destroyed. What do you think?
Well,
I think it's all tied together.
Yeah, I've been listening to a number of generals, and they indicate that, they were really skeptical. They said we certainly could not win a war fighting against Russia and China. And especially, there's nowhere in the world we could win a war fighting against Russia and China and North Korea and Iran. Too many enemies. And at the same time now, here's what's interesting is Israeli News Live, Danoon, he says his intelligence is he says that Ukraine is massing troops and preparing for a false flag chemical provocation. He says that Ukraine has already gathered 12,000 troops to be ready for an attack, and says that the UK, the British agents that were involved in the Syrian false flag attacks, the chemical attacks, were already in the UK setting up this false flag chemical attack. And we know that's how the CIA and the British, behind the scenes do that. And
yes.
What's interesting is Danoon said he's telling everybody to watch around December the 14th for this false flag to occur, and then a massive attack that Ukraine will make towards the Russian. And now what he says, true or not, I don't know, but what he's saying is that this attack is to begin a war between Ukraine and Russia that's going to draw NATO close, and it's going to supposedly, according to Danoon, apply so much pressure on a battle with Putin that when Saudi Arabia and the U.S. and Israel attacks Iran, Putin can't get involved.
Well, I think maybe they're underestimating Putin, but that's just my take. They've got some pretty fancy weapons, and I was reading an article where NATO admitted that Russian electronic jamming and killing of electronics on their boats is very real, and obviously they're going to use that on the NATO vessels that come in there. So, to me, this is just an act of stupidity on the part of the Illuminati. They got to have their war, and evidently, sooner or later, the Lord is going to give them their war. And if they so much want the world, I guess He's going to give it to them for a short time before He takes it away. So, this sounds very strange, all of this activity all of a sudden, particularly when you look at all of the, activity over here with Trump and his kind of, coded message, possibly, that he intends to declare martial law. Been a lot of headlines coming out of Sorcher Fall. You can't always deal with that as honest reporting. But here's one of the headlines. Putin warns nation to prepare after Trump begins formation of martial law military government. His top aides hint to the Russians. They told them, top U.S. officials confirmed to Putin that Trump is preparing for a military takeover of the United States. December 11th, today, President Trump's first martial law threat to the Democrat invokes coup plotters' rage. Remember where he said we're going to have the wall, even if it takes the military, and they're all poo-pooing that. But if he declares martial law, that's the end of their arguments, isn't it? What do you think? All of this seems tied together, particularly with the attack on our southern border. Sounds like chaos everywhere.
Yeah, I think that he may move the chess pieces on the table, because if President Trump declares martial law, Congress and the Supreme Court judges and everybody that opposes him, all the lawyers and all the courts, can go home.
That's right. In fact, the Atlantic, one of the most ancient of magazines that's still in existence, did an article on Trump being able to declare martial law. Why would they bring that up right now? Unless there's really something to all these rumors that Trump definitely is going to declare. He's fed up. You could tell it at the meeting when they televised with Schumer and Pelosi. He's fed up with them. He's very angry at them. And he's the type that could just decide, okay, I've had enough. And we could have a false flag. In fact, I would be surprised at this point if we don't have some sort of a false flag in the United States over the holidays, if not before. And, of course, he can legally declare martial law if there's a war overseas, particularly if one in Israel breaks out. What's your final word on that? We only got about a minute left. I just wanted to brief people on what's going on.
Yeah, I think you're right. And with the Democrats and all deciding that they're going to impeach him and maybe even indict him and send him to prison, we're at a crossroads. We're actually at a crossroads, and this is the very reason, Stewart, I have tried to kind of give a little wisdom and tell people don't get too far from home during these holidays.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be very smart to be traveling very far at all. That could include even an EMP attack, and they can blame it on anybody to bring in martial law. He can use any number of things to do it, and it's not going to be a good time around the holidays, or maybe even before. We may have something happening before the Christmas holidays. Definitely, probably within the next month or so. Anyway, thanks a lot, folks, for hanging in here, and we just wanted to bring you a brief update. It sounds like war for sure over there, sooner or later, and all the military movements would indicate that that's the case. Very expensive logistically to keep all this going without a war. So anyway, thanks a lot for listening. Larry, thanks for coming on, and we'll see everyone probably tomorrow.